Our relationship with food and our bodies is a reflection of our relationship with ourselves. And it is valuable and imperative that we prioritize it.
Hi, I'm Melanie Barr. Welcome to the She Built It Experience with Melanie. Join me as I talk to women who have successfully built it, a career and business that they love. We dive into the topic of how they built it and talk about everything from having the courage to make career leaps to the details of how to lead effectively, create successful teams, implement strategies for growth, and infuse tech innovation. Magic happens when we focus on the part of ourselves and our business that brings us joy. So let's dive in. Thank you for joining us, Jessica. You are the founder and leader of your business, Escape from Emotional Eating. This is something we have not talked about on the She Built It podcast yet. And I know at one time or another during our lives, we have all leaned towards doing it. Tell us about your business and why did you decide to launch it?
Since 2011, I have been helping women who strive for excellence heal the roots of their emotional eating so they can embody their full potential. And I got into this work and created Escape from Emotional Eating because I was an emotional eater for a really long time and didn't know it. And then when I got over the shock that I was an emotional eater because I didn't have hundreds of pounds to lose, at that point I had already had professional expertise and certifications in nutrition and health. When I went to look for support, I didn't fit into any of the boxes or the support that was out there. Like I didn't fit into something as extreme or severe as an eating disorder. And I knew I needed something more than just eating healthy and working out because I already was doing that. That's what my background was in. So that's what led me down this path of dedicating myself to healing my own relationship with food. And then reaching this point where other people were like, what are you doing? And why do you look so happy? And what's going on? And that was where Escape from Emotional Eating birthed from, because there were more people showing up who were just like me, who didn't fit into these typical support systems. And I knew there had to be a level of support for women who operate at a high level to heal these deeper roots. Because if we have a high level of stress and a high level of pressure put on us, we need to take care of ourselves differently in order to deal with it. So that's where Escape from Emotional Eating came from.
You have been featured in media outlets such as ABC, CBS, and Mind Body Green. What is the number one thing that you hope someone listening will take away from your conversations?
Our relationship with food and our bodies is a reflection of our relationship with ourselves. And it is valuable and imperative that we prioritize it, but also really value it, even if other people do it differently or value it less. From a business perspective, those media spots, they're pretty big names. I got them on my own. I didn't have a PR agency. I didn't have any real background in how to pitch media. We assume we have to have all of the things in order to get to the next level. But what I believe, and this applies to our relationship with food or our relationship with work, is that we can create so much with what we already have.
And good for you for pitching on your own and having the confidence and saying, I'm going to do this, because they said yes.
Yeah, they did.
Even people that look at their relationship with food can be in our house or can be around us. So you're right that it's so important that we think about our personal journey, regardless of who is around.
Yeah. And it's especially important because a lot of dysfunction with food can be passed down and passed around in relationships, whether that relationship is between friends. How do you relate to food? What do you guys do? And how is that different than when you're on your own? How do you engage with food when you're around family? What's the expectations, the unspoken expectations in those dynamics? And then even with your children, if you have children, what are those unspoken expectations and how different our relationship with food can be if we don't have that strong foundation with ourselves first?
And that's so true because we can even think, oh, I'm eating healthy. But I just recently trained and ran a half marathon. And I'm even thinking, okay, how can I be more healthy and fuel my body in an even healthier way than I was doing before?
Yeah, that's a mindset of people who strive for excellence is taking times of intensity and saying, okay, what do I need to support myself to be able to perform at my best or perform at this high level? Where the default setting for a lot of people is, okay, this time of intensity is coming. What can I do to take the edge off, let myself off the hook? And then after the intensity or after this time, then I'll get back on track. What makes successful people more successful is looking at these opportunities and saying, how can I support myself rather than the conventional thinking would be, okay, how can I sabotage myself or how can I not support myself?
It's so interesting to think this through on the deeper level because we don't always do it. And it became apparent to me when I started training because I was hungry all the time. And I thought, okay, first of all, I can't eat and then run. So sometimes I'd have morning meetings and I'd see, oh, how long can I stretch without eating? Not because I was trying not to eat, only because I knew if I ate, I wouldn't be able to run. And then if I didn't run, I wasn't training. I hadn't thought so much about it. And then I thought, I'm starving all the time. If I'm running 10 miles, how am I going to continue to fuel myself in a healthy way? And I'm sure within a business workday, we work all day and we don't eat and then we eat a giant meal at night. It's how can we fuel ourselves in the way that's going to sustain us for that high level successful living that we're striving for?
Yeah, and that's something I hear all the time, especially for entrepreneurs is, oh my God, I love my work so much, I forget to eat. I want to call that out because you're actually disassociating from your body. If you go more than 3, 4 hours, if you're not training for a marathon, the common window, and this all is individual, so everybody's different, but if we're going more than 2, 3 hours without eating, we are putting our bodies into a stress response and we are setting ourselves up for overeating later on. And then it becomes this cycle. How do we negotiate our needs of the business, of our bodies, of our own energy, of our personal goals into this giant package? Because a lot of people will go through their day, like we've been talking about, and either just completely disassociate or be in this regimented, okay, it's 12 o'clock, I have to eat. Okay, it's 7 o'clock, I have to eat dinner. And don't even connect with their body. And are you hungry? Are you actually hungry or are you emotionally hungry? Because those two languages of our bodies are very different. And then for myself, when I was emotionally eating, I was hungry all the time, but I was not training for a marathon. So it's emotional hunger. So I think it's important if we're going to show up at a high level in our lives, both personally and professionally, that we are getting serious and also having those same intentions to making sure that we can show up fully.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of digesting our emotions, you believe in digesting our emotions, not just our food. How do you work with clients to do this?
So, digesting emotions is actually a 9 step process that I created first for myself. And now it's something that I teach my clients because something I was always hearing from therapy and various ways to try to heal my emotional eating was feel your feelings. Okay, I hear you saying that, but what does it mean? Because in my mind, if I felt my feelings, I was not going to come out of that experience alive. I literally had this fear that my feelings are a tsunami. I needed a way to be able to walk myself through a process of feeling, but also a process of moving through it and onto the other side because I had to show up at work. I had to be a functioning human being. I couldn't take tons of time to feel my feelings, especially when they were inconvenient or overwhelming. So that's where this tool came from. And the first phase of it is helping identify what it is that you're feeling, because there can be so much mind body confusion. We can be feeling one thing and think it's anxiety, but it's actually excitement. Or we can be feeling this thing, but it's actually this thing. So it starts to, number one, help to name it. So you can tame it, is a phrase that we use, and then be able to connect the dots so that you're understanding why you are feeling the way you feel. And this is really helpful for people who are sensitive and often pick up energies or emotions that aren't even theirs. Because if you can't connect the dots to the what you're feeling, it's usually not yours. And then it's where we get to in the end of the process is really understanding what's the unmet need underneath it all and how to meet it. Because that's really why emotional eating shows up in the first place. Our body is trying to communicate like a warning or a sign or something, a need. And we haven't been trained or equipped to understand what it's trying to say and what actually needs to be done. So we just try to like stuff it with food. So this allows my clients to be able to have a healthy, secure relationship with their emotions, and also to have courage and confidence that no matter what shows up in their day or their life or even in the future, that they'll be able to handle it because they have this tool among the others that I teach to be able to handle whatever comes. And then you can put yourself into taking more courageous risks and doing more in your life, falling in love if relationships are something without the fear of losing the person or breaking up. And there's just so many things that it can support you in when you have that healthy resilience when it comes to emotions.
And some people do take on more of other people's emotions.
100%.
Some people are more empathetic. So I see that. What do you believe is one of the Achilles heel of most successful women?
I believe it's emotional eating. I believe that we can get into a pattern of using food as a way to take the edge off or to try to come down or reward ourselves. And it actually stunts so much growth. It causes what I call like an invisible divorce from ourselves. So it creates a buffer between you and how you're feeling and your inner knowings. It really shrinks and disassociates people from their intuition. So it's harder to know decisions to make because we can't get a felt sense if we're numbing ourselves.
So interesting to think about this on such a deep level where when we ignore eating, we're not listening to ourselves.
Right.
Or when we eat and we don't stop eating, or we're eating when we don't really need to be eating in a way that's going to fuel us, we're denying ourselves again.
Yeah. And the great thing is that when we heal that, we know what we need, we know what we want, we have direct access to our voice and our courage to be able to put it out in the world. We become the creators of our hopes and needs and dreams and desires. We recognize this is my life and I get to choose what I want to do and create.
You believe that coping mechanisms are actually roadblocks. Share with us your thoughts on this.
I believe there are certain coping mechanisms that are healthy and in alignment. And then there are certain ones that people will often call vices that are actually old and outdated. Things like emotional eating or retail therapy, as people call it, or mommy wine time. If you're doing any of those things, I'm not judging you. I'm just inviting you to evaluate which of your coping mechanisms are helpful and supportive and which ones are actually holding you back or making you stuck. Because when it comes to emotional eating, overeating, or if it's over drinking, or even overworking, or even over responsibility, these are all coping mechanisms. These are the ones that will hold us back, deflate our energy, make us more exhausted on top of the exhaustion you already feel. It can really stunt your growth. So that's where we want to be looking at emotional eating and a relationship with food and how is this actually holding you back in the short term. A lot of people will be like, oh, it's good, it makes me feel better, or I look forward to eating, but then it's like all the energy that gets caught up in the shame and the guilt and trying to work it off, and what did I just do, and I can't keep doing this, and the cycle of over and over again.
And it's so interesting because I'm not really a dessert person. I enjoy chocolate, but sometimes I think, oh, I'll have a little bit of ice cream if I'm out with my family or something little after dinner. And then I've learned to listen to myself. I don't feel better when I have it. I don't have dessert very often, but I thought, why am I even saying yes to it during those times when afterwards I feel worse? And I know everyone is different, but now I've learned to say, no, I'm okay. Or I'll have a bite or two and that is it. Because if I eat an entire cupcake, I'm going to not feel good.
Yeah, that's such a great and practical example because if it's not dessert, it's a drink when everyone else is drinking, or if it's not this, it's that. What it really boils down to is this unspoken fear of being who we really are when everyone else is doing something different, particularly when all the people that we care about the most, like our family, are doing things that are different. And the unconscious and subconscious fears of being called out for it, being ridiculed, being pressured into doing something you don't want to do. So while it's just showing up on the surface as like dessert or a drink, what it's actually doing is reinforcing that it's not okay to be ourselves. Now, the beautiful thing for you is that you've already found a way around it and you're like, wait, this is another option. I can say no.
It took a while though, because you're at a birthday party and everyone's having birthday cake. And then you think, am I not supporting the birthday if I don't take a piece of cake? Now I'll say I'll take a small one or I'll just have a couple bites because I've learned if I eat the piece of cake, I do not feel better afterwards. And it took a while to think it through because you're at a birthday party, you're not always thinking, oh, how am I going to feel after I eat this piece of cake? You don't really think that, at least I didn't going into it. But then I realized I don't feel better after. And some people are dessert people. Some people like sweets. I don't deny myself at all from the things that I do enjoy. And carrot cake is my favorite. But I don't want the whole piece of cake. I just want a couple bites and then I'm good.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think through the whole process because we don't always do it. And I don't even know if I've even actually thought through me not taking the whole piece of cake until today. I know what I'm doing now, but I never thought through that entire process. And I definitely didn't talk about it.
Yeah. Now, someone who, let's say, in our work together is experiencing something similar, we're going out to eat, and this is what I'm quote unquote supposed to do, but it's not what I want to do. In our work together, we're able to identify what is it that you actually want? What is it that you actually need? And let's take a look at all the ways that we can create that. And how do we manage the situation with other people when it's inevitably brought up so that it's not this awkward, why aren't you eating? Or have more, the pressure that is often placed on us when we're trying to make changes in our relationship with food. The other part of this that we're talking about without talking about is how we've become so socialized in the ways that we should act around food or what we should and shouldn't do. But if we really peel back the layers, a lot of this socialization goes against what we really truly need and want, and even what our bodies can and can't digest. I'm Italian and I grew up in an Italian family. So pasta and cheese are the main food groups. Growing up, we could never figure out why I was having these stomach aches, and they would become more frequent in the summer, and we could never figure it out. I even had to be hospitalized a few times. It was dairy.
Dairy. Okay. I was thinking gluten, but no.
It wasn't until I was in my 20s and went on this health retreat and we didn't have dairy. My acne cleared up, my allergies cleared up. How did I not know this? Because dairy was always a part of my life. Wait, you mean what I'm eating is actually making me sick? This is a thing?
And if you think about it, allergies, I have a strange fruit allergies. People are different. Some people, I know someone who's allergic to zucchini. We're all so different in the way our bodies process things too. That's another thing that we don't always think about. And you mentioned the pasta. So the night before I ran the marathon, I don't eat pasta a lot. My instinct was to get a steak. But then I thought I'm running the next day. And then everyone around me was eating the pasta. And I decided to go with pasta. And then I didn't feel great. I didn't eat too much. I didn't go with my instinct. I realized that the next day, and it was just one day, right? And the only reason I had it is because I was running the next day. But my instinct was to get the filet. And I remember going home going, I should have had the filet because my body would have felt its normal self. I didn't beat myself up. I wasn't upset, but I just didn't feel as good as I could have. And I told myself that night, I'm like, never again. I'm just going to eat what I know my body's going to want, and I'm going to feel the best afterwards.
Good for you for even being able to receive that instinct, because for a lot of my clients, they can't even hear that little voice, or they'll confuse it as fear, and they have a hard time deciphering between what's actually my intuition and what's actually this diet culture that's baked into my brain. Good for you for being able to hear that and know that and be able to revisit the situation after and connect the dots in this process of understanding your body and what works and what doesn't and what is the cause and what is the effect. Is that willingness to try, experiment, and then know, and try and experiment and know. And similar to my experience with dairy is that I didn't have the agency to be able to experiment with dairy or even just different foods, because at that time I just thought food's food, so nothing could really make me sick. But then even after I got home from that retreat and started to understand, okay, dairy is a thing for me, there were times where I didn't know there was cheese and pesto and immediately found out.
Magic happens when we focus on the part of ourselves and our business that brings us joy. What is one way that you make sure to find and live your joy?
Finding joy, feeling joy, experiencing joy has been definitely a journey alongside of my healing, my own emotional eating, because as Brene Brown says it, like we can't selectively numb. So if we're numbing the hard stuff, we're numbing the happy stuff too. Part of my healing has been to be able to feel it all, but also permission to feel the good stuff too, because that can just be as unnerving as it is to feel the hard stuff. But I would say for me, when it comes to joy and receiving it regularly and daily, am I in my body? Because if I'm not feeling something, I'm not here, I'm not present. So, number one is to make sure that I'm in my body. Like from the moment I wake up, task number one is get in my body. And then from there, to really let myself feel, whether it's the weather as I'm walking my dogs, or excitement when I look at something on my calendar, or these little moments, because so often we can look for these like big happy moments or be waiting for these big things. There's so much joy in the here and now if we allow ourselves to feel it, feel the good feelings, because the more you do, there's different octaves of feeling good. And the same way there's different octaves of feeling dark. And that whole range is valuable and healthy. And I really believe that we all need a little permission to feel all the feelings.
Yes. Such good advice. It has been so much fun talking to you and talking about a topic we've never talked about on the podcast yet. So much fun. Can you tell us how and where we can find you?
Yeah, so home base for me is at escapefromemotionaleating.com. My work is centralized around the 4 roots of emotional eating, which isn't something we got too deep into today, but it is something that I really nerd out on. So if anyone who's listening wants to learn more about the 4 roots and even find out which of the 4 roots is activated for you and causing overeating, you can head over to innerwork.me to take the free quiz, get the free resources, and start working on this deeper level in your relationship with food.
Thank you for joining us today. I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me at hello@shebuiltit.com, on our She Built It website, or at She Built It on social. Thank you to my editor, Rich Streffolino, who always makes us sound good. Until next time, let nothing stop you from experiencing the life and business that you crave.